Hi everyone, my name is James Feeney. Welcome to or back to my channel. It is now July, which means that I have a month's worth of favorites and wonderful experiences to share. So without further ado, we'll dive right in. As always, I start with the decks, the various decks that I've used the most and liked the most throughout the previous month. Then I move into books that I've read and do mini reviews, I guess, on those. And then I start to speak to miscellaneous objects and different bits and bobs that have caught my eye and been important for me. And I culminate with the experiences and the less tangible aspects of the prior month. So we'll start with the decks. The first, and the ones that I'll get out of the way really quickly because they've been mentioned before, are just a Marseille deck. This one specifically, this is from Cartogram. It's a reproduction of the Dodal. I really like the coloring. It's linen. It has perfect cardstock for me. It's slidey. It's good for riffle shuffling. I keep it in this custom case that it came with when I bought it, which I really enjoy. I know you can get Cartogram's decks on Etsy, and I know they have a website as well. You can also get custom handmade decks, so there's a lot there. I've been using the Marseille a lot for client readings actually the past month, or the month of June, so this was one that was getting used in that capacity a lot, but it was also really nice to throw in my bag just because it does have this hard magnetic case. I know it's not going to get too banged up, and the linen cardstock holds up really well, so I would say this was probably one of the most used. One that's, of course, no surprise, but I do need to mention it, is a copy of the Thoth. I just had the greenie on hand. I feel like I did use this one the most this month. The Thoth was more in personal use, I would say, for me this month than client use, because the Marseille was being used in that capacity, so that was how that was going. And when I'm using it for myself, I tend to go for the larger size or one of the greenies. Compared to when I read for clients, I like to pick the trimmed, smaller version, so that way I just find it works better for clients. But for me, I will use the larger one or one of the greenies. And another one that makes an appearance quite often is just a playing card deck. The one that I tend to use the most is Usi's Pagan playing cards. This is what they look like. I show this all the time. I keep it in this little leather drawstring sort of pouch that I can tie up, and that's really convenient. And now onto some that might be a little less obvious, I guess, or might come as a bit of a surprise. One that I've talked about a bit, but it kind of fluctuates and comes and goes out of my life, is the Alchemical Tarot. For some reason, I felt very called to the imagery of this past month. It might have to do with a lot of green tones that are in the deck, and the fact that that's been a prevailing theme in the world around me, given that it's the early summer. So this is what it looks like for those who aren't familiar. I know I've done a review on the book that accompanies this, along with some of Robert Empois's other work and decks, but this is what this looks like. And so yeah, that made a loud sound. This was one of the ones that I found I was using a bit. I actually did use it with clients a couple times. I felt more called to have more, I guess, greater illustrated images rather than lesser illustrated imagery. So in readings where I felt called to that sort of imagery, I went for the Alchemical Tarot as opposed to maybe the Thoth or the Rider-Waite-Smith for whatever reason. And two other decks, I guess I have two more to share. One of which I did a review of not too long ago, or a walkthrough actually, because I haven't owned it long enough to do a proper review, but it is the Open Portals playing cards. This is the hard box that it comes in. It's a two-part box. The deck is by James R. Eads, who has also done, I think it's the Light Visions Tarot, and is that it? I know the Cosmo Visions Oracle is one of his decks as well, but this is a playing card deck. There are two versions of it, a light and dark, which just basically affects the color palette. The images are the same. It has nice linen cardstock. If you want to know more about it, I do have that video. I'll link it around here. But I just found the imagery to be really interesting. One of those playing card decks that does have a different style to it. There are very illustrative quality. There's an illustrative quality to all of the cards as opposed to just the court cards, which I appreciate. And then there are some themes and elements that are unique to this deck alone. So I've really been enjoying that. It feels like a fun adventure of discovery and just using playing cards in a different way. There's also a game that accompanies that deck, which has been really fun to figure out, although I haven't fully played it yet. It does require, I think, 3 to 4 people, if I recall. So there's that. And then the final one that I have been probably using the most actually this month, surprisingly, is a Lenormand deck. I've been getting back into using Lenormand. It's been quite a while. I've always had one on hand, but it hasn't been a system that called to me to be used regularly. But the one that I've been using is another deck from James R. Eads. It's the Green Glyphs Lenormand, I think. Yes, that's the name. It comes in this hard box, which is really nice, and it came with this book, which I read this book this month as well, although it's not a large book. It covers the meanings, and then there are a few chapters in the back on different ways to read the cards and some tips and tricks, and then there's a really interesting and fun preface about using Lenormand, and also there are some book recommendations in here, which I appreciated as well. I haven't read too many books on Lenormand, just maybe 1 or 2, and it's been quite some time. I also got this pouch, which comes separate, but James R. Eads does sell these pouches, and so that's where I've been keeping the deck. It fits perfectly, which I love. I like to keep my deck safe, and these are the cards in case anybody's not familiar with the deck. I think the backs are really pretty. For me, I'm not a huge Lenormand person. For me, I also feel like I may be more compelled to just have one, considering the images are more so meant to be just what they are, and there's supposed to be less interpretation or, I guess, creative liberty taken and the way that one would interpret based on that. It's really just the idea of the symbol itself. But I do get on really well with this art style. It feels simple, it feels clean cut. It has this sort of neutrality to it that's modern. It doesn't skew toward a positive or negative, I would say, feeling, or yeah, I guess just more of a feeling in the way it's depicted. I like how the certain figures, there's more of a gender neutral way of going about it. There are extra people involved. You can pick the person as opposed to the lady or the gentleman. You can have 2 gentlemen, you can have 2 ladies. Appreciate all of that. And even for the cross, there's the option to have the substitution, which could be the albatross, which is another one that's appreciated, especially for anybody out there, I'm sure, that has hard feelings or just a weird past with maybe Christianity or organized religions. So yeah, this is more of a rose petal finish cardstock, which isn't actually my favorite. It does sometimes make them stick together a bit into little clumps, but I have found that as I've used it more, it's breaking in really well. And the gilding, which is not super, super shiny, more of that matte or semi-matte gold, deep gold coloration, is really pretty as well. Definitely been enjoying that one, and I've been actually pulling a Lenormand card and a tarot card each day instead of a playing card and a tarot card. So that's been a little bit of a shift in my practice, which I'll get to when I speak to journaling, which will come in just a bit. Now we'll get into books. And I actually have not read as much this month as I normally would. It's been a busier month, and there are many experiences actually at the end, which will then explain why I've had a little bit less free time in that way. But I did fully finish 2 books. The first one being The 12 Houses, Exploring the Houses of the Horoscope by Howard Sesportas, forward by Liz Green. I mentioned this in my recent video on astrology for beginners with some book recommendations and tips and tricks and resources that I recommend. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was, actually out of the 2 books that I fully finished this month, this one was my favorite. And I found it to be a really easy read. It was conversational. It's not super modern. I think it was written in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken. So there are some pop culture references and things like that that won't really hit home for anybody who isn't familiar with those time periods. But I think that the way that this book speaks to the houses and explains them really nails home the importance of the houses in any sort of natal chart or in astrology in general. I think that they tend to be the most forgotten aspect of interpretation when it comes to natal charts. I feel like the signs of the zodiac, I feel like the planets and the aspects are all really at the front runners of when we interpret charts, but houses tend to get secondary status in interpretation. This really, it speaks to the signs, the planets, and aspects, but it does so through, I would say, the lens of putting the houses in the place of importance. And of course, there are more sections just solely allocated to the houses. Really enjoyed this. I felt like that was the weaker part of my personal astrology practice, was my understanding of and relationship with the houses, and this fixed that to a greater degree. Would highly recommend it. It's not super, super long, but it is a little dense. It's heavy on the words. There's not a lot of pictures. The font is a bit smaller and it takes up the whole page. So it is one of those books that I think you need to give yourself a little bit of time with. And also the technicalities within make it something that you need to really focus when you're reading, as opposed to just skimming through and feeling like you got the gist of what's being said. It is one you might benefit from taking notes or taking your time reading it, which is the case for me. I did take my time with this one. The second book that I finished this month is Ariadne. I hope I'm saying that correctly. That's always how I've pronounced it, by Jennifer Saint. It is a novel. It's a relatively new novel, so I have it in hardback. I don't think it's out in paperback yet. It's one of those types of books where a myth or a character from mythology is the protagonist, and it's sort of reimagined through their perspective in a way that's a little bit less traditional, where we're seeing it as if it were, of course, written in a novel sort of way, as opposed to a more poetic or epic poem where there's the hero. We know that Ariadne is not really the main character in the story that she's primarily featured in, which is the story of Theseus slaying the Minotaur, and she's the one who gives him the string to lead him through and guide him back out of the labyrinth after he kills the Minotaur, and we get to know a little bit more. It's sort of reimagined and revamped. I actually didn't like this all that much. It took me a while to get into it. It didn't get very exciting until I would say maybe the halfway point. We do switch between perspectives at some points between Ariadne and her sister. Her sister's name, what is the sister's name? Let's see. Phaedra. Phaedra is the sister. I think I actually enjoyed Phaedra's story and personality and writing in terms of being a character a little bit more. She was more plucky, and I think she had more of a transformation throughout the book, whereas Ariadne felt like a weak protagonist to me. She didn't really stick up for herself. It didn't seem like she changed all that much throughout the book. She kind of kept this meek demeanor in spite of having gone through so much that you would think would strengthen her. Not to give too much away, I would say it's one of those, it did remind me a lot of the books that have been written by, and I forget the author, but I have read her work, Circe and I think it's the Song of Achilles, which are both sort of reimaginings of Achilles and Circe from Greek mythology. This kind of felt a little bit like a knockoff, not to say that the author of those two books gets to monopolize and copyright the idea of rewriting characters in mythologies, but it did feel like this was trying to be what those were, and it didn't hit the mark it just didn't quite hit the mark. I do appreciate that the ending was a little bit less traditional. I'll say less traditional, a little bit less Hollywood in the way that it all comes together and it's kumbaya at the end. I do appreciate when books don't end quite like that. I'll just leave it at that. But it wasn't my favorite, actually, and it took me a while to get into it. And I did like when they introduced Phaedra as more of a protagonist, although her storyline is a little bit more chaotic and messy and problematic. I think as a character, she was more engaging, whereas Ariadne felt a little flat to me. But I still would recommend this for anybody who's interested. I do think that there's something here that others would like, maybe that I just didn't. Now, as far as books that I would normally have finished 4 books, I like to try to get 4 in a month, but I did have a lot going on. The 2 that I'm in the middle of right now are Read Like the Devil, The Essential Course, and Reading the Marseille Tarot by Camelia Elias. I've read one of her other books. I intend to read the other 2 installments in the Read Like the Devil series, the one on Lenormand and playing cards, which are on their way via Amazon, but I'm a little bit more, I'm about halfway through this one and really enjoying it so far. I'm sure I'll have more to say and a more cogent review come next month. And the other one that I'm in the middle of right now is The Fairy Teachings by Orion Foxwood. This is more of a animistic way of looking at fairy culture or fairy mythology. It takes the sort of Celtic lens, but through an American practice. So it's more so based out of, I would say, the more Appalachian region of the US, and then taking that Celtic or older Celtic mythology and transposing it onto an American practice. It's very folky. I would say that this is less about the specifics, and it has more of a meditative animistic, grand scope feeling to it rather than something that's super, I would say, specific in the practices that you're supposed to engage in. It's more about concept and ideas. It has a free-flowing nature to it. I'm not fully through it, so I can't give a full review. So far, I'm really enjoying it. I usually look for books like this during the warmer months, ones that are more nature-based, magic, involving the fae. All that I tend to seek out during the spring and summer months, so this is probably one of what will likely be a few books on this topic that I'll read this summer. Another book that I didn't even start but I felt was worth mentioning because it does have some bearing on this month is Rabbits by Terry Miles. This looks to be a big one. It is a novel, but the reasoning behind me getting it is really what makes it important, although I haven't even started it yet. I was actually out to dinner with a friend and we saw the clock and we were talking about, I guess, angel numbers and the synchronicity of seeing a bunch of reoccurring numbers and what we attribute meaning to. And I remember looking at the clock as we were having that conversation and seeing that it was 4:44 in the afternoon. And so I thought that was funny. We laughed about it. But then after dinner, we went to Barnes & Noble's to look at books. I saw this book on the table or on one of the tables, and it was the first one I picked up, and I went to read the description, and the very beginning of the description says, it's an average workday, you've been wrapped up in a task, and you check the clock when you come up for air, 4:44 p.m., which was the time that I'd just seen and we had spoken about. You check your email, and 44 unread messages have built up. With shock, you realize the date is April 4th, 4/4, and when you get into your car, you drive home, your odometer reads 44,444. This kind of has to do with this weird sort of game in society. I don't fully know what it's going to get into, but it seems like there's this whole world and this idea of these numbers meaning something in terms of significance. And it just felt too on the nose for me at that moment, so I felt like I had to pick it up and that there would be something within it for me. So I'm curious to read it and see what I learned from it, what I find within it, if there is an important underlying message that I'm supposed to seek out and learn from. So really that one was just a funny coincidence, and I just thought I would share it, although I haven't started the book. I'm hoping to read it either next month or the month after. So we have that. I guess now we'll get into the miscellaneous objects. So I will start with, I guess, kind of journals. I mentioned this last month and having purchased it for a friend and I. So I got one for me, I got one for my friend. This is the Burn After Writing journal. It has to do with really just being self-reflective and present and understanding oneself. So there are a bunch of prompts within. It's not a huge journal. Some of the questions are more difficult to answer. Some of them are open-ended where you'd write a paragraph. Sometimes it's about filling in the blank or checking boxes. But really it's about getting to know yourself and being more mindful. I filled out a good chunk of it. I wouldn't even say I'm halfway through it, but every couple days I'll try to make a concerted effort to sit down and fill out some of the prompts. I have been enjoying it. It has been challenging in its own way, which I've really appreciated. So I thought I would just share my update on the fact that I am enjoying it to an extent. The next miscellaneous item I have is this planner or almanac. I guess it's a planner and almanac. I shared this in my astrology video that I recently posted for beginners, just the idea of surrounding yourself with astrology as a means to learn more quickly. So this is a customizable planner. I'll link the website I got it on down below. It's from a website I believe called Honeycomb. You put in all of your information. You can customize this in a lot of different ways. I got the hard copy in spiral bound. I also have a digital copy. It has my sun, moon, and rising right here on the cover. Mine starts in July of 2021 and ends in June of 2022. You can have it be a 12-month or a 6-month planner. There's also my name on the bottom, which is a nice little touch. And you get to decide basically what you want. So it includes your natal chart, and you even get to choose the type of art when there are places where art's involved. I chose this more collage aspect, but there are a couple different types that you can use, and each month gets a new sort of little bit of art. And it has my natal chart in it. You get to choose the house system that you're using. There's also a key if you're not super familiar with everything in the front, how to go about interpreting the glyphs and signs. There's also, a key for just the transits and all the different things that might come up later so that you can interpret for yourself. It has the moon cycles, it has transits. It will tell you what transits are occurring or what aspects are occurring. just in general in terms of planets, but also ones if a certain planet is aspecting one of your natal placements and what that is. So then I have my birth chart here. I chose whole house for my house system just because I've been resonating with that way of interpreting my chart lately. And you get a little bit more there. You get your solar return chart for 2021 and 2022. You get all of the full and new moons throughout the year, along with the eclipses. And then before each month, you get the transits, you get the moons, you get mundane transits and stations and all those sorts of things. But then it does function a bit like an actual planner. So you get this. This shows the notable moon phases along with different transits and aspects and all those things. And then we move into, let me just pick one that I haven't written in. So each week you'll get a little, like each day gets one of these. You'll see the transits and aspects and the moon cycle or the moon phases. And then I chose to add a note section, which is more, you have to choose that as an add-on, but I didn't think I would have enough room to write here. So I have a note section where I can just write whatever I want. I can maybe speak to the transits and the aspects that are happening and hopefully learn more each week. It's nice to go through each day and be able to see what's going on. And even if I don't understand it in the deepest way, or I have a little bit of struggle and need to take some time looking at it, I know it's there, and I know that I've already written the things that I'm doing for that day there, so I'm going to reference it. And so I am continuing to learn those finer details, I guess, in astrology. So this planner's been really great. You can even pick more add-ons than I did. You can add a lot of the asteroids. I know I added Chiron, but I didn't add a bunch of the other asteroids. It did mention with a disclaimer that would probably make the chart look very confusing, and so I chose not to add it, but definitely recommend this. I think it can range anywhere from about $20 to a little over $50, depending on if you want the hardbound copy or just the digital and all the add-ons that you might put into it. But so far I'm really enjoying it and would recommend, so I'll link it down below. And then I guess we will show my journal, or at least, I'm not going to show any of the entries, but of course it's my daily journal that I will write basically my interpretation for a Lenormand and tarot card, or at least this month it's a Lenormand and tarot card. And I usually draw a little doodle or illustration, but I guess a new addition to the journal on top of that is a daily prompt that I've been doing. My friend sent me these prompts from a TikTok account. I'll try to remember to link this account down below, but this creator basically started this 30 days of shadow work. So each day they would post a prompt, and I would then do my normal daily journaling, and then I would do or answer the prompt, the shadow work prompt. And it's usually just a question about yourself, who you are, your past, your history, all these sorts of things. And I found that it was really nice and a nice addition to the daily aspect. I think they're continuing to offer these prompts through July as well. They decided to keep going with it. So it might be fun to just go back and start with June. It has no significance in tying it to June, so you could probably do it whenever. And I was debating if I would put it in my larger journal or my daily one, but because they're daily prompts, I put it in here. And so that's been really fun, kind of upped my daily journaling practice a bit, and I'm almost at the end. This doesn't connect to where I'm at, but I only have a few pages left in this more sketchbook style one, so I'm curious to see what journal I'm going to pick after this, and if it's going to involve more of that sketching element as well, or if I'm going to revert back to just writing, or if there's going to be some new element I choose to add to my journaling practice. Now, a few more miscellaneous bits, which are mostly just crystals and jewelry. Let's see. I guess we'll start with the jewelry. So there's this necklace that I'm wearing right here. I got it on Etsy. I'll link the shop down below. They're actually a creator from New Jersey, the state that I live in, which is funny. It wasn't something I did on purpose, but I went to check out and then saw that they happened to be in the same state as me. So I felt really happy about supporting a local creator. But that also meant that it got to me basically within a day, because there wasn't really far for it to travel. So this is a choker. If you're on the website and you're debating what kinds of chains to get, I know this is an option for some of the necklaces. This is the Omega chain, I believe. It's really nice. It's kind of bendy, but it is fully silver. So it has a really smooth, interesting quality to it. I think it's 14 inches. and it fits me perfectly as a choker. But if your neck is a little bit larger, this is a 3-inch extender, so it can go up to 17 inches essentially if you need it to. So if you're looking for measurements on that, but I really like this. I think it's a nice, smaller, daintier piece, something that's not so flashy and in somebody's face. It's also nice when I'm wearing t-shirts or things that have a higher collar, and I don't really know how a necklace would fall, or if it's a button down and then the necklace would fall like right on the buttons and it doesn't look right. This is what I would tend to go for. I also got a second necklace from this website. This one it's made from an ammonite fossil. Well, it's the imprint or made from a mold of an ammonite fossil, but this is silver. I like how the string kind of goes through and goes under through these little, I guess, brackets you could call them. It's a nice piece. It has a silver bead here to make it adjustable, so you can make it, I actually can make this one kind of like a choker, or I can make it a really long necklace, basically however I want. So I like that it's adjustable in that way. They have rings, necklaces, all sorts of things on their website, or on their Etsy page, I should say, and I'll have that link below if anybody's curious. And then the other jewelry piece, I guess, that I got this month is this carnelian ring. It's just raw carnelian or polished carnelian that's in the shape of a ring. My friend actually gave this to me. She got one as well, and I guess carnelian's like the big thing on TikTok now. There's usually something that's like trending, and I believe last it was moldavite, and everybody was going crazy looking for moldavite and getting moldavite, and the new one that everybody's talking about on TikTok is carnelian. And so my friend went to go get a carnelian ring, and she got me one as well, which I thought was really sweet. And so we've been matching, wearing those a lot of the time. And then I have a few little crystals. I just stopped at a crystal shop on a road trip down south a little bit I'm going to get to that in a second, but I just picked up a little piece. This is Pre-Night. I believe it has some tourmaline in it. I got this little piece of I think this is zebra jasper. I believe it's zebra jasper. I thought that one was really pretty. And then just a little rose quartz sphere, just a little baby one, and it kind of has a rainbow in it, which I like. But yeah, that takes us through the miscellaneous objects, and now into experiences. This month has been busier, both with work, and that one is something that I'm really excited about. I'm very thankful that business has been picking up as businesses reopen, as people feel more comfortable coming into the shop that I work at or signing up for classes, and just, booking readings in general. I feel really grateful. For a while there, it was quite slow, and I have been actually debating if that's something that's sustainable for me or if I need to change directions in terms of the things I'm pursuing work-wise. But this month has actually been really good, so I'm really thankful for that, although it has been a bit more time-consuming, but I can't complain. On top of that, I had my mother's birthday this month, or in the month of June, and of course there was Father's Day as well, so it was kind of back-to-back weekends of celebrating both of my parents, which I'm very happy to do. I was very glad that I got to, show my thanks and gratitude and celebrate them in that way. I also went on a road trip and went down to Baltimore. I'm in New Jersey, so it's not terribly far, but it takes a few hours to get there. And I went there with a few friends. Maybe I'll insert some pictures from the trip or with my friends here. I know I posted a few on Instagram, but that was really fun, and that was kind of a longer weekend, which I really appreciated. And then on top of that, there was just a bunch of outdoor social activities going on, with the weather being so nice where I live, although it got really hot. So there was a lot of family and friend time this month. There was a little bit more working. There was a lot more socializing for me than I would normally engage in, but I am very happy to have had that time with those people that I care about. So if that means maybe reading a little bit less and conceding on that, then I don't mind that at all. I think it was well worth it. So that just about, I think, sums up the experiences that I've had this month. I almost forgot, there is one more experience. I don't know how this almost slipped my mind, but over on Hanny's channel, we did a live. It was Hanny, Lennon, Manuela, Anna, and me, and we had a wonderful time. I definitely recommend checking that out. We answered some fun questions, just had a good time talking about tarot and spiritual things and all sorts of things like the meaning of life. So I will link that live down below. And we just did one actually, but it technically would be in July. That one's over on Anna's channel, and so I'll link that one down below as well if anybody wants to check it out. They're a lot of fun, and you can also play along with the game if you'd like, even though now you'd be watching the uploaded version of it. I think you could probably still follow along and play the game and make the guesses, so I would recommend checking those out. They'll be linked down below. But I hope you are all well. Comment down below things and experiences and how your month of June was. I am curious. It seems like it was one that was, I guess, a turning point for a lot of people, or at least a lot of people that I know. So I'd love to know how you felt during June and what you have coming up. I hope you are all well, and like and subscribe if this was fun or interesting. And until next time, bye.